Hi everyone, it's Jessica. Thanks for joining with me today. So today I have 3 photos. I have printed them at a 3x4 size. I'm going to use those for today's layout. I did print at home and I noticed that something was up with my printer. The coloring was all off here. So I messed with the ink a little bit, tried printing again, ended up with some smudges on them, even though they did print better the second time. But I'm just going to go ahead and use these photos for my layout today so that I can actually get some scrapbooking done. But I'll probably print those again later. So I pulled these pattern papers. I think they'll work with this sketch by page maps that I found on Pinterest. And so I went ahead and cut some of those papers down, including a piece of black cardstock that I'm going to use to map my layout. I thought it would be fun to have that little peak of black as a frame around the white part of my layout. So I did gut out that center to save a little bit of paper. I'm all about saving paper. I don't know why. I have so much paper, especially pattern paper. You will notice that I have some smaller strips here that I'm going to use to build that background piece. Now on the sketch here, this top and bottom above the photos, I think that's meant to be one piece of pattern paper, but I was trying to be thrifty, so I'm like, I can cut that as 2 tiny little strips and then cover it in the center here with another piece of paper, and you'll never know that there isn't a full sheet of paper back there. But again, I don't know why I do that to myself, because I really need to be using up my stash. I've got so much paper, I just have a hard time using it sometimes. I don't know why that is. So I'm just kind of fitting a few things here to get an idea of how this is going to look based on my paper choices. I'm going to lay my photos out like this with that one photo that's farther away in the center. And then I also have this cute little tag. It was on the back side of that red pattern paper, and I'm just going to fussy cut that out later and put it here to the side of my circle. Then I did save these 2 branding strips as I was cutting up my pattern papers because I thought they would be fun to layer across the bottom of the circle. I really like this white one here. It has a bunch of colorful stars on it, and that made me realize that I wanted a few other pops of color on this layout. So I actually flipped over that black and white pattern paper to see what was on the back side, and it did have some really colorful diagonal stripes. Unfortunately, the way that that particular piece was cut, some of the stripes it had a little bit of a chevron kind of look to them, so I did have to cut a different piece to get that. So I don't know. There you go. I went through a little bit more paper trying to get just the perfect piece. I am gluing all of this center cluster together so that I can move it as one unit. I thought it would be fun to pull out my Distress Oxide inks and do some black background blending on this page. So I want to be able to pick this whole thing up and move it as I'm, checking my ink blending to see if I'm happy with how much color I put down. So yeah, that's why I've got all that part glued, but not glued down to the page. When I was going through my Distress Oxide colors, I immediately was drawn to the Saltwater Taffy. I think that is going to be the perfect peachy orange kind of color to complement that circle up there. I love Saltwater Taffy. It's one of my favorite Distress Oxide ink colors. So that's going to be the winner. And then I recently picked these up on Amazon. My friend Melissa Miner, who's also here on YouTube, she featured them in one of her videos a couple months ago. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is what I need in my life, because I have little individual Ziploc baggies for all of the little foam heads that match my Distress Oxide inks. And they're just thrown together in one giant Ziploc bag. And it is, I never use my Distress Oxide inks because it's such a pain to go digging through all of those little baggies to find the one color that I need. And this contraption is awesome. They're just some jars that screw together, and they come with the little dome-shaped foam heads, and then you can put one in every single jar, and they're all neatly there. I did take one of my recent snow days, took some time to label them. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. And as you can see, I am getting back into playing with some of my inks that I just really don't play with often enough. So like I said, I'm adding just a little bit of blending behind that whole center cluster of papers there. And then here is where I'm going to go ahead and cut off a piece of that branding strip to put at the bottom of the circle. I wanted to use it somewhere else, so I tucked a little bit here at the bottom. I'm going to trim just a little bit more off, but yeah, that way I'll have some at the top and some at the bottom, and I will get all that glued down a little bit later. All right, I went digging through my stash and I found some really old thread ribbon that is going to match that same kind of peachy orange color, and I will use that to go through the top of my tag. So I am excited to get these photos documented. They're from not that long ago. Actually, my daughter just got braces put on, and she has been looking forward to getting braces for the longest time. I didn't want to tell her that her mouth was going to hurt and that she wouldn't be able to eat anything for about a week, and burst her bubble. So we just kind of were like, yeah, braces, so exciting. And of course, she was like smiling in these photos, but later she was like, oh, I need more ice cream. I can't eat anything. But so I've got one photo of her in the after where you can see her braces, and then the other two are when we were first arriving at the orthodontist appointment. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit of hand stitching here in some black. I want to bring in a little bit more of that black color because she's got black coat on, black leggings, and I think that's going to be a nice contrast against all of those brighter colors that I have in the pattern papers. So I'm going to do just a little zigzag stitch here near my circle. And then the other one that I'm going to put at the bottom, I'm going to have to do once I get that whole thing glued down because it's going to need to go through that white cardstock that's part of the base. So I realized right about this point that, I've been pulling all of these papers together and doing the stitching and stuff, but I hadn't really thought about any embellishments or title. And that's a little bit out of order for me when I put a layout together. So I was like, I should probably kind of pause here for a second and figure that out. So I pulled out all of the embellishments that came with my December kit, and I really liked these flowers here. I'm going to use one of them, especially that one because it's got some black in it as well. Again, trying to pull that black in. And then I kind of struggled with where else to put flowers. So I tried a little bit. You'll see me try a few times to get some more flowers on there, but that's going to be the only floral cluster that makes it to the page. And then I also was drawn to these glittery foam like bursts and stars and things. So I pulled out all the ones that are kind of that orange coral color, and they'll end up in a slightly different spot on the layout, but I do end up putting those down as some other embellishments. I didn't really find too many other things that were going to work for my page about, getting braces on. I just kind of used those alpha stickers that came with my kit to spell out the word smile, and then I found a stamp that said amazing. So I did that for my title up there and added some journaling lines to that little tag. Like I said, got those glittery foam stars down. And at that point I was like, okay, well, am I done? I don't know. I feel like I should probably add some more. So here's where I'd already cleaned everything up and put it away. I'm like, let me open it back up again and try one more time. In the end, I don't really add anything else. It feels kind of simple and plain in some ways, but honestly, that's my style. And when I get to points like this where I'm trying really hard to add more things, I'm not really trying to add them because I want to add them. I just feel like I should add them. And sometimes I need to kind of get over that feeling and just go with, what makes me happy. And I like clean and simple and not a whole lot, just kind of little fun things to look at, like the ink blending and whatnot, and the little bits of stitching, but nothing too crazy. And that's just how I scrapbook. So I think I'm going to call this done. Yep, this is it. That's done. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching and that you are getting in some crafty time as well. And I will see you guys soon. I'll leave you here with a couple of still shots. Happy crafting. Bye.